Anytime that you refer to Suicide Squad from now on, I'm going to need you to say Oscar-winning Suicide Squad.
God damn it. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast. Discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well, dude. I'm just got back from vacation today, so I'm in a little bit of a slump, a little bit of a depression.
A little jet lag.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's like there's this weird depression of just being back to life in Evansville and going back to work.
I appreciate that.
No, it's like
you got home, you came straight over here, and you're depressed.
I mean, obviously this is a highlight, but getting ready to go back to work in a couple days and just kind of being back to the routine of things is a bit jarring. But besides that, I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm all right. I hate to monopolize the introduction again. I shared a kind of traumatic story last week. I have another doozy for you this week. It's not quite as traumatic, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I've told this story to a few people throughout the week because I think it happened on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, and it was like a 20-minute story. Obviously, I'm going to just give you guys the bullet points. So recently, I canceled DirecTV and we were going to go straight to streaming. And so I wanted to up our internet a little bit. And so Time Warner Cable had this deal that we were getting 100 megs, which is fine, but I was like, let's bump it up to 200 just to be sure. And it was only $10 extra a month on their website.
Okay.
So did that. Everything was fine. And then I got my first bill, and they had little item lines, and it was $20 for the upgrade. And I was like, nah, brah. And so I called the guy back. And I guess they're moving over to Spectrum, so there was a little bit of confusion there because I was technically on the Time Warner pricing, and I was basically told the guy, I was like, I don't give a shit what you have to do, just give me it for $10 because you said you were going to give it to me for $10. And so he was like, okay, I got you taken care of. Like after 5 minutes, I was like, okay, hung up, whatever, thought it was taken care of. Well, we lease a modem from them, and I was like, you know what? Getting to the point where we should just own our own. That way we don't have to pay the $10 a month. So I bought one. I did some research and I got one that's like overkill for the internet that we were getting in case I ever wanted to upgrade, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. So I get it, set it up, call them. Woman goes to provision it. Internet's working. Like I have my computer hooked into my Ethernet cord. It's working, but the Wi-Fi is not working. So she does a bunch of tests. She can't figure out. I mean, we talked for like an hour. She could not figure out what was wrong with it. So she tells me to call the people that I got the modem from. Call them. They do a bunch of tests. He can't figure out what's wrong with it. He's like, as soon as you put that Time Warner internet in is what shuts off the Wi-Fi. It's something that they're doing. So I called them back, talked to a different lady, talked to her for about 45 minutes. She can't figure out what's going on. So finally, I was just like, well, let's set up the one that you gave me because at least that one works. She sets it up. That's still doing the same thing that the other one was doing. She's like, oh, now I understand. She's like, you shut off your Wi-Fi earlier today. Like they thought I had taken Wi-Fi off of my account earlier. I was like, no, why would I do that? Why would I continue to talk to you trying to fix my Wi-Fi if I know that I didn't have Wi-Fi? Apparently, the woman that I talked to first shut off my Wi-Fi. Don't know why. I mean, it was obviously a mistake because why would she try to help me fix my Wi-Fi for an hour? So there was nothing wrong with my modem. Well, through the course of talking to 3 different people, I realized, well, they had told me that I wasn't getting 200 megs. I was only getting 60. So then I had to, after we figured it all out, figured everything out, the Wi-Fi was working, she transferred me over to customer service. And so I'm talking, apparently what happened was the guy that was supposed to be hooking me up just in order for him to take care of it. And I say that in quotes. He just downgraded me to 60. Didn't tell me that that's what he was doing. Just did it. So
to shave the $10 off. That's
yes,
okay.
To get it to where I wanted it to be. But I didn't want it. I didn't want that price.
Yeah.
I wanted $200 for that price because that's what I was promised. But he didn't tell me that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, you need to switch me back. And she's like, well, I can't because now you're on Spectrum. You were on Time Warner. I can't do that anymore. She was like, the only thing I can offer you is the 60 or the 300. And the 300 was like 90. As she's telling me all this, I'm literally on my computer signing up for WoW. I was like, I am done. I've literally talked to somebody for 4 hours at this point. And I mean, it was crazy. So I signed up for WoW for the same price that they were trying to get me to do 60. WoW has offered me 500, which is above and beyond anything that I would ever need just for the two of us streaming and me playing Xbox Live. So I was like, I let her do her spiel, but I know at this point I've already set up an appointment and everything for Saturday. And so I was like, she did her spiel. I was like, okay, well, go ahead and just cancel it. Cancel it on Sunday. Cause it's Wednesday. I don't want to be without internet for the next couple of days. Just set it up for Sunday to cancel. She's like, what? Like, I was like, yeah, this is bullshit. This is not how you run a company. So you can't help me. So just cancel it. She's like, well, can I ask you, like, what is WoW offering you? I was like, well, it's none of your business, but it's 500 for the same price that you're trying to get me 60. She's like, well, I know for a fact that they can't offer you 500 in your area. I was like, okay, well, that's between me and WoW. So it's none of your business. Cancel it. So she cancels it. And I was just like, you know what? After all of this, I want to make sure that I'm getting what I'm paying for. So I call WoW and I tell him the story and he just laughs. He's like, not only do we offer 500, we offer 1,000 in your area. So she just flat out lied to me. So it was literally like 4.5 hours of my night Wednesday.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the gym. No, it was Tuesday. I wanted to go to the gym, wanted to do more Let's Play videos, didn't do any of that. Just talk to these people on the phone. It was probably the loudest I've ever yelled at a complete stranger in my entire life. Cause at the end of it, I was just like screaming at them. I was pretty pissed. So not as bad as the rabbit story, but it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy. Just to keep fairness on both sides, I will say that I have WoW, and they've been pretty good for the most part, but I have had my issues with them as well. So yeah, I think it's just that thing where any internet or cable company is gonna fuck up somehow.
Yeah, I had WoW at our townhouse when we lived there, and we had some problems with it. And I had Time Warner way back when, and I never had any problems with it. So when we came to this house, I was like, well, we're going back to Time Warner because I never had any problems with it. And I mean, that was just the craziest thing that I've like just complete incompetence all the way around from the guy not giving a shit and just switching me, downgrading me, to the woman shutting off my Wi-Fi, not knowing that she's literally tech support. And she shut it off and couldn't figure out that she had shut it off. And just like incompetence the whole way around. So even the shitty internet problems I had with WoW, I'll take versus people just either screwing me or just not knowing how to do their job at all. Yeah. And since Saturday, I mean, we've only had it for a day. It's been amazing. I mean, everything's worked out fine. We haven't had any buffering, nothing. So yeah, I'm happy with it so far, but it's only been a day.
No, I mean, besides like one phone call and a couple things here and there, WoW's been great for the 2.5 years I've had them. So hopefully you have the same experience. For sure.
So we start off each episode by kind of just checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So what are you into this week?
Well, like I said, it was pretty much Disney World for 7 days. So I didn't really, dive into any new TV shows or watch any movies over the last week. But I am going to talk about a show that I had watched previous to my trip. So if there was a new episode last week, I didn't see it. I'm going to talk about just the general consensus of the first 3 episodes of the show, which is Powerless.
Okay.
Which is a DC comic show on NBC. It's a half-hour comedy, kind of a workplace comedy it's basically, to be honest, The Office with superheroes is essentially what I think they're going for. And I mean, that's an insult to The Office. So
sure.
So mostly, I guess maybe instead of that, just like a workplace comedy. But it stars, it has a really good cast. Danny Pudi from Community.
It has a well-known cast.
I think that, well, Danny Pudi, I
like him on Community, and Ron Funches, but
Ron Funches
what's her name is not good.
And Alan Tudyk.
Oh yeah, that's true. So, I forgot about him.
I'm just kind of talking, not to be sexist here. I mean, those three alone should be enough to carry a show. And then you add in Vanessa Hudgens, who the only thing I know her from is Spring Breakers, and that movie was god awful. So obviously, I know she was like a big Disney Channel person.
I think she was in High School Musical.
Yeah, so she did that stuff, and I never saw any of that work in quotes. But she's kind of the main character of this show,
and she's really bad.
Yeah, she's not great. So basically, these people work for an insurance company that is a branch of Wayne Enterprises. Alan Tudyk is actually a Wayne. His name is Van Wayne. He's Bruce Wayne's cousin. So they specialize in products to help protect defenseless bystanders for collateral damage involved with superhero showdowns and fights and so on and so forth. It takes place in a real DC city called Star City. But it very much name drops throughout the first three episodes. Like episode 3 was a big Batman episode where Ron Funches and Danny Pudi's character are trying to meet Batman because they have one of his batarangs, and Alan Tudyk doesn't like Batman, but of course the humor there is that his cousin Bruce Wayne that he loves is Batman, and they play off that quite a bit. They name drop Superman, Wonder Woman, like all the big ones. They're not shying away from name dropping, but the only character I believe that they've shown on screen that's real was in the pilot, and I think it's Crimson Fox, which I'm not familiar with. I guess she's a hero in Star City, and that's something that I don't know a lot about, even though I am a big DC fan. I don't know all the ins and outs of it like I do more so in the Marvel universe. But to be honest, like, the show is really not good. and I think that I'm going to keep with it because they have the right pieces there. It's just they're not knocking it out with the humor right now. The jokes are really few and far between. I don't laugh when I watch the show. I think that with the cast they have, like excluding the whole Vanessa Hudgens thing, there's a lot of comedy power there, but they're still trying to find their footing. It's more of like a DC Comics Easter egg show, just with the conversations they have and so on and so forth. But right now, it's not bringing the humor. I think the first season might be 10 episodes, and I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get renewed because I don't know how it's doing in the ratings. I don't know if the DC part of it are bringing viewers in, but I think that there's an idea here that they could make work, but right now they're not doing so, and they kind of need to step it up, especially given the talent that they have within this show. Although that being said, I will say that like the opening title sequence is probably my favorite on TV right now. It's really awesome, but that obviously is 30 seconds of a 25-minute show that can't make up for anything.
Yeah, I've seen the first 2 episodes. I haven't seen the Batarang, so I obviously haven't seen the third one yet. I just saw the first 2. I'm pretty much right there with you. I don't have the love for the DC universe as you do, so that probably won't keep me into this show as long as it might keep you into it. I like the cast, other than Vanessa Hudgens. Is that her name? And I think it was episode 2 where they force a musical number with her. Yeah. And I was just like, come on, man. But I mean, that's all she's got. No. She's not a very good actress, and I don't think she's very good in the show. But like you said, I think they have the pieces there. I like Ron Funches. I mean, I'm a fan of him in general, so I'm going to root for anything that he's a part of, and he's one of the main reasons why I even started watching the show. It just reminds me of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They're never going to give you Captain America or Thor in that show, and they're never going to give you Batman or Superman or anything like that in this show.
Batman on the CW verse, then they're not going to put him in the half-hour comedy special. Half-hour comedy on NBC. I think that there are interesting stories to be told for civilians living in a superhero world, but this show's just not getting it right now.
Oh no, for sure. And I'll probably stick with it for the first season just because, I mean, like you said, it's only 20 some minutes long. It's a pretty easy watch every week. So it's not like it's an hour long and like Gotham was, that was like torture to get through it some episodes. So it's a pretty easy watch. And if it's only of 10, 13 episodes, like you said, and that's not too much of a commitment.
For sure, man. Especially since it's probably going to be the only season.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. What are you into?
Well, I am going to talk about and kind of give my general thoughts on Halo Wars 2. For those that follow us on the YouTube channel, I've been doing a lot of Let's Plays, kind of my walkthrough of Halo Wars 2. Haven't actually played the multiplayer yet, which for real-time strategy games, that's kind of the big thing. But I wanted to do the walkthrough of the campaign first, which was a mistake because it is not good. I think I've done 6 episodes, and my last episode was actually supposed to drop on Saturday. We're recording this on Sunday a little bit later than we normally record. I just couldn't do it, man. I had like 3 more stages to go, and I was recording it, and I got about halfway through the first one that I had to do, and I was just literally gonna just record until I was done. And if it was an hour and a half video, it was an hour and a half. But I couldn't even do it. I was just so bored with it. And I was like, I'm not going to put this out because if I'm bored, you guys are going to be bored watching it. It just, sure. I know real-time strategy games have a hard time with campaigns, and they're almost at a lose-lose because if they don't come out with a campaign, then it's Star Wars Battlefront and we're complaining about how it's only half of a game. But when you come out and it's a campaign like this, it's like people are bitching about it because it's just not fun. There are some stages of it that are fun. What I really like about real-time strategy games are you build up the base and you have like waves of guys, or you have an enemy base that's also building up and you're just warring against each other. That's really fun. You're upgrading stuff and you get to kind of learn how you want to play the game. There are certain stages in the campaign that are like that. I really enjoyed the last 2 videos I actually put out. That's what those 2 stages were. And it was a lot of fun. It was complete fucking chaos, but it was fun. That's what I like about those types of games. But most of this campaign has just been, there's 3 little enemy bases. You're going to take these guys, point and click all the way around the map, take all 3 bases, and then you're done. And it's just rinse and repeat the entire time. And it's just, it's frustrating because I think it could have been a lot better. I love the Halo universe. I love being in this universe, and I would like to see a really good real-time strategy game in the Halo universe, but this just wasn't it for me. It was a really bland, like they had a really bland villain.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just didn't like it.
Yeah, I've never been really huge into real-time strategy games, and I never played the first Halo Wars, so Halo Wars 2 wasn't even on my radar. But it must be pretty boring for you to decide, when you're almost done with the Let's Plays that it's not even worth it. So that's disappointing.
I mean, I'll circle back and play it on my own time.
Yeah.
Because I'm that close to being done with the campaign. But like I said, I was bored playing it. I can't imagine how anyone would want to watch me play it. But also what was kind of hurrying me up a little bit was the fact that the Switch came out on Friday and I got Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I'm going to start my Let's Plays for that tomorrow.
Oh, awesome.
Tomorrow for you guys. I'm actually going to start it it's tomorrow for me too, but you won't see the first video until Tuesday. And I've been really, really digging. I've only played a little bit of it, but I'm really digging it so far, and it's been a lot of fun. I've heard some complaints about the Switch as far as Connect issues, and just overall, it's not quite an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4. Like, it can't, as a console, can't really compete, but it's really fucking cool that I can sit there and play a Zelda game while I'm sitting in the living room on this tablet. It's really, really cool. Like, I haven't even played it on the TV yet. Really? My wife has been really digging it. She loves Zelda games. She's not a huge gamer, but she does love Zelda games. And it's funny because we didn't really get in an argument per se, but she was not happy when I told her that I had pre-ordered the Switch. She's like, well, we never really played the Wii U. Like, we were both excited about the Wii U. and we bought it and we just never played it
Yeah.
at all because that was really disappointing. And I've talked about that before on the podcast, so I won't get into that. So she was kind of upset that I would go out of my way and spend the money to pre-order the Switch. And I think she's played it. Well, I know for a fact that she's played it more than I have. I've actually started to get a little irritated with her because basically the tablet only has like 3 hours of battery life. And so she'll play it for a few hours while I'm doing something else. And then I'll be like, oh, well, can you pass it to me? She's like, oh, the battery's dead. And so I got to wait a couple more hours before it charges. I actually have only played it for like 2 hours total. I was playing it when you came over.
Yeah.
And it's really, really fun. I love the fact that it's open world. Like Zelda games have never been open world. I mean, you could go around and do kind of explore a little bit, but this is completely open world. And I have already gotten kind of lost in it. And so I can only imagine as I get more into it, that I'm just going to get completely lost, kind of like what I did with just Fable and Far Cry Primal. I got lost in that game. Yeah. I love RPGs, and I will do 4 or 5 hours of nothing, basically. Like I was hunting a boar earlier before you came over that has nothing to do with the actual game. So I'm really starting to dig this game quite a lot. And like I said, I don't even think I've gotten through the first stage of the actual campaign itself.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you never played any of the Elder Scrolls games.
I did. I played Morrowind for about 2 hours and couldn't get into it. I mean, I know that's not enough time.
Yeah.
But I was so frustrated with it. Like I kept dying at the same spot and it would bring me back to life. I think I might be remembering this incorrectly, but I think they start you off with like nothing. Mm-hmm. And it was just like I had nothing to defend myself with. And I just kept dying over and over again. And I just said, fuck this. Because I remember I played Fable. And I loved it. And my cousin is a big gamer as well. And I was talking to him one day. And he was like, oh, man, you love Fable? Check out Morrowind. It's Fable, but better. I checked it out. I was like, nah, bro. It's not at all. But, yeah, I just never got into those games. I know that's a stupid reason. Same reason why I didn't get into Resident Evil was because I couldn't change the controls from inverted. Like, that's a stupid reason not to like a game. And for 2 hours, I really didn't give Morrowind a good shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's a few games removed at this point, too. Like, I played Oblivion for a while, and I'm going to play Skyrim because they re-released it for Xbox One, but it seems like those games would be up your alley, so I was just surprised.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to get it when it comes out for the Switch. They're re-releasing Skyrim for the Switch. I never played it. I heard it's like one of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
And so when it comes out for the Switch, I will definitely be picking up.
No, that's awesome. I didn't realize they were doing that.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so our next segment is just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a ton of each week. I'm guessing he probably didn't read that much this week because he was in Disney World, but what did you read?
I read a comic on the plane ride home today.
Okay.
So, it's a comic series that I've talked about a lot on here, but I honestly think that if I would have read 5 or 6 comics this week, that I would still be talking about this one because it was really great, and that's Batman 18.
Okay.
So this is
still not caught up on it.
So I won't spoil anything for you, Pat, but this is still just kind of working through the I Am Bane storyline.
Yep.
And Nightfall is, known as one of the quintessential Batman comics. It's the famous comic where Bane breaks Batman's back.
Yep.
And I should be ashamed to say it as a Batman fan, but I've never read it. I know that they sell the volumes, and there's like 3 volumes that are.
I've read part of it. I have never read the entire thing because it's huge.
Yeah, they're huge, and it's like not a bucket list thing, but it's like it's on my to-do list. My nerdy to-do list is one day I'll read all of the Nightfall books. But that being said, outside of that, Bane hasn't really made an imprint on the Batman universe, in my opinion. I mean, he pops up in stories here and there, but he'll always be known as the character that broke Batman's back in that comic. And this comic, while I don't think is going to necessarily stand the test of time when people will talk about this comic as the quintessential Bane comic, it has been really good for that character, and it's really made me appreciate that character more than I ever have. Dark Knight Rises kind of did, but that in a different sense. So like comic book Bane with his silly mask and his venom pumping through his veins. This book is doing a lot for me with that character. 18, especially because it shows the parallels between Bruce Wayne and Bane that I never realized were kind of there. So this book is basically Bane and Batman fighting. It's kind of the combat book that you get in a lot of story arcs where it's mostly action. But what they do is they're flashing back to, the Batman story we all know with his parents dying and Alfred raising him and him traveling abroad to become Batman. But then they're putting it side by side with a panel of Bane and what he went through to become the villain that he is. And there's a really strong parallel that they draw between Bruce Wayne's stories and Bane's story, whereas Bruce had Alfred and, he had a lot of nurturing, even though he lost his parents that made him a hero. Bane lost his parents in this prison and he didn't have an Alfred, and he grew up in this prison hating everyone and wanting to avenge his mother's death in a different way than Batman did. So that alone kind of got me bought into this comic pretty quickly. It was just this weird parallel that I've never seen between the characters, and it makes Bane as a villain that much better, in my opinion. The end is great as well. It sets up for a great conclusion in the coming issues. And again, I won't spoil it because I know you're not caught up with it, but this I Am Bane storyline, I honestly didn't have high expectations for, but it's probably the best of the Rebirth stories that they've done so far in the past year.
So are you just saying that the I Am Bane stuff is really good? Because I didn't like the I Am Suicide Bane stuff. I absolutely hated it.
He's so in I Am Suicide, I know that you don't like the Psycho Pirate character.
I absolutely hate him.
And so in I Am Bane, he's still trying to get to Psycho Pirate, but Psycho Pirate's not really been in it.
Yeah.
It's been more, and he's put on the mask and he's got venom in his veins, and it's more, comic booky Bane, as opposed to a guy sitting on a skull throne, so it's kind of removed itself from the I Am Suicide stuff, and now it's just about Bane getting revenge and being a badass. So it's connected to that story, absolutely, but it's a lot different in the same respect.
Yeah, I'm a few issues behind just because Comic Quest decided to pull from my folder when I took that month and a half off because of my mom. Yeah. They pulled 15 from my folder. I guess they didn't order enough issues or whatever. I don't know what happened, but I went back to Comic Quest and they did not have 15 for me. And so I just recently got it from Midtown because I always wait until I have a couple so I don't have to pay for shipping for one fucking issue. So I just recently got 15. And so I read through 14 and kind of had that roadblock. And so I just recently got 15. So I'm going to read the next couple. I think it doesn't come out next week. Because this week is Flash. That's how I keep track of it. Because I get Batman and Flash, and they're both bi-weekly. So this is Flash week. Yeah. So next week will be Batman. So I'll definitely get caught up by the time 19 comes out.
Yeah, for sure. So what'd you read this week?
All right. So it's no surprise. Obviously, we're going to be reviewing Logan. And I actually haven't read All New Wolverine. I don't really like what they're doing with the X-Men right now, so I actually haven't read a ton of X-Men stuff in the last couple of years. I gave up on Extraordinary X-Men about 6 months ago because it was just an Inhuman story featuring X-Men. Yeah. And so now that we've seen Logan and we know what it's about, obviously X-23 plays a huge role in that film, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. I thought it would be actually a pretty appropriate time to start reading All New Wolverine because I heard it's really good. So I picked up the first volume and I read it yesterday. I'd heard really great things about it, and it's as advertised. I really enjoy it. I love anti-heroes. Wolverine obviously is a great one because he's a superhero, but he also kills people. X-23 is another good one. She really doesn't run from her past in this comic book. She is the new Wolverine. Logan's dead. So she's kind of picked up the mantle. He was her mentor. And so as a kind of tribute to him, she wears the costume and everything, and she is Wolverine. And so I really like the fact that she's had this checkered past, to say the least, but she doesn't really run from it. She kind of embraces it, and she is trying to kind of be the Wolverine that Logan would want her to be. Not necessarily the Wolverine that he was.
Yeah.
But kind of the Wolverine that she would want, or he would want her to be. There's some pretty dark stuff in the first volume. A lot of stuff that we actually see in Logan a little bit, kind of like people experimenting on mutants and stuff like that. And so she tries to save these 3 sisters that were experimented on, and obviously she's been experimented on in her past, so she obviously relates to these sisters. So I really appreciated all that stuff. So it's definitely dark, but there are some like pretty cute moments as well. So it's not just like beat you over the head with it. There's like this romantic comedy aspect, because apparently her and Angel are dating, which I thought was kind of funny, because those are completely polar opposite type of characters. So I thought that was pretty funny. And I'm excited to read more of it. Unfortunately, I saw that the second volume is the Civil War II tie-in, and I obviously am not a huge fan of that particular event, so I'm not sure exactly how they're going to ruin that character for me by tying her into a really shitty event. But obviously I'm going to read it just so I can get along with it. But yeah, I'm definitely I am upset a little bit that I haven't been reading this the whole time, because it's a really great book.
Yeah, so whenever this came out and they were relaunching a bunch of Marvel titles, it was kind of the same thing with Rebirth. It was like, all right, so which ones am I going to pick up here? And that was one that didn't even blip on my radar. I'm like, no thanks. And now, after seeing Logan, which we're going to get into, that's definitely a book that I would like to revisit for sure. Oh,
yeah, I would definitely suggest it. And my buddy Mike is actually who talked me into it, because we were actually discussing Logan. And I was like, yeah, I didn't really like the X-23 stuff as much as I wanted to. Well, obviously, I'm spoiling a little bit our review. But he was like, man, that all-new Wolverine is really, really good. And I was like, yeah, that's what I heard, and blah, blah, blah. I ended up picking it up like almost immediately after we talked about it. So,
did you get the trade paperback, or did you?
No, I just got it from Comixology. I just bought the first volume from. I will go back for my collection. I actually would like to see how difficult it would be to get all of them, all the issues, but because I mean they're only at like 17 or 18, but we'll see. Yeah. I'll look into it.
Cool.
All right, so our next segment is just nerd news. Tyler compiles all the big nerd headlines that happened in the past week since last time we talked, and we just kind of discuss them. So what's nerd news this week?
So it's kind of old news by now, but we haven't recorded since the Oscars was televised. So definitely not going to run through like all the winners and losers, just wanted to put it out there and see, what you liked, what you didn't like, what surprised you about the telecast.
Well, first of all, it was a pretty boring show. I wasn't crazy about this year. I mean, obviously it's something that we look forward to every year. It's the big movie award show. I mean, you have the Golden Globes, but that's also TV. But this is the big one. I just didn't think that Jimmy Kimmel did a very good job. I thought he was sleepwalking most of the show. Like, I didn't think any of his bits were all that funny. I thought the Matt Damon stuff was funny, but we've seen all that stuff before. He's been doing that for years. The one where Matt Damon was presenting and they just said Ben Affleck and guest.
Yeah.
That was really funny. But it was more Matt Damon's reaction to that I thought was funny. I actually thought the funniest part of the show was Seth Rogen and Michael J. Fox. I thought those two together were pretty adorable, and that was a lot of fun. The Moana song was amazing. I was pretty upset that
she did an amazing job, right?
Yeah, and she got hit by a fucking flag, too. I know, and she didn't skip a beat.
She's 16 years old, and she just belted that shit, man.
I loved his little rap intro. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was bummed that they didn't win, but I mean, they vote before that happened, so it's like, but it's still, after that great show, it's still kind of disappointing that they didn't win. And then, of course, the end was what I mean. I think this will go down as probably one of the more memorable Oscars,
for sure.
just because of that, which is a shame because it was a really boring show, other than like maybe the Moana song. But other than that, it was a pretty boring show, but everybody's going to remember it because of that thing that happened, which was crazy because it was funny because my wife and I were watching it and she had to get up early the next day and go to work. So as soon as they announced La La Land, she was like, okay, well, good night. And I started getting ready to do my reaction video. And then I looked over at the TV and I was like, wait a second, what the fuck's happening right now? So that was crazy, man.
Yeah. I was at Disney during the Oscar telecast, but we had got back to our hotel for like the last hour. So I did watch the last hour and I saw all the crazy stuff happen at the end live. I was you didn't watch the Grammys, did you?
My wife did. I was in the room, but I was doing other things. I don't really pay a whole lot of attention.
So, like, I barely paid attention to it either because I don't really care about the music that's popular now and,
sure,
you know, who wins those awards. But I guess, so I do remember at the end, Adele won whatever the big award is of the night. And she was saying in her speech how, oh, this should be Beyonce. Lemonade is so great, blah, blah, blah. And so whenever the guy from La La Land is saying that to Moonlight, I'm like, oh, so he's just doing what Adele did. And saying like, oh, Moonlight's such a great movie. But, you know, then, I mean, by this point, everybody knows what happened and shit just got really weird. But I have not seen Moonlight. It just came out on Blu-ray and I got it. So I will be watching it soon. But I know that you weren't the biggest La La Land fan. So do you think Moonlight is better than La La Land?
Oh man, the story is better.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, Moonlight's story is a lot. I've said my piece about La La Land. I don't know. They gave him directing, so I'm fine with that. I actually kind of liked the way it went down. Obviously, I didn't like the way it went down per se, but I liked the way that they kind of gave out I liked that La La Land didn't completely clean up too, as well.
Yeah. I think when you think back to the 2016 and movies, I think that La La Land is going to be the one that sticks out and Moonlight is going to be forgotten.
Do you think that we have a Crash Brokeback Mountain situation?
Maybe not that dramatic, but you know, even with those two movies, I mean, I don't think that either have really stood the test of time, but I think more people have probably seen Brokeback Mountain than Crash and probably enjoy it more. So same with, I just think La La Land has a lasting appeal and Moonlight's going to be forgotten about.
For sure. I can agree with that.
So we did our nerd favorite, not last week, but I believe the week before, where we did, as long as this person wins, we'll be happy. And I said the Moana song will win How Far I'll Go, and it didn't. So that was disappointing, but I will say I was very happy that the Jungle Book won for special effects. So
yep, and Zootopia won for best animated.
Yeah, and that was great too. So, you know, not a total loss.
For sure.
Unless you're Moana. Then it was a total loss. Okay, so let's see. I have a lot of stuff tied to the X-Men universe that I'll save to
transition,
segue into Logan. So I guess Jared Leto is being courted to be in a reboot of the Tron movies.
Yeah, I saw that. That was first of all, I've never seen a second of any of the Tron movies.
See, you're not missing much.
Really? I've heard they're really good.
See, I like Tron Legacy a little bit. And, you know, I mean, obviously I just got back from Disney, huge Disney fan. These are Disney movies, but I don't get them. I don't get the appeal. Especially, I guess with the original, it's kind of a cult classic, and it is a hard watch nowadays.
Really?
Yeah, it's not easy. Tron Legacy is okay. It's not bad, but I just don't see. They have so many properties now, and I know you can't ever make enough money. So
yeah,
but I just don't know that Tron is one that you need to revisit.
I mean, they've already remade everything that they can remake, so they have to. It's weird because. Isn't Tron Legacy, or is that a sequel or is that a reboot?
Sequel.
Oh, okay. I had no idea.
It's a far removed sequel, but
okay.
And it's kind of, I don't know, man. They're weird movies.
So this would be its only reboot.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would. But still, I I don't know. Oh, Jared Leto's such a good actor. I mean, he could make something out of anything, but I don't know.
It just seems like he would be hesitant to do another big blockbuster type of movie. Not that I think that Tron is in anywhere near the ballpark of Batman or anything like that, but it just seems like from what he said after Suicide Squad came out that he would be hesitant to do a big blockbuster like this again. Anytime
that you refer to Suicide Squad from now on, I'm going to need you to say Oscar-winning Suicide Squad.
God damn it.
No, but I agree with you. I think the Joker was the first thing he did after Dallas Buyers Club, right? So, you go from winning an Oscar to being in a movie that didn't really do so great.
That won an Oscar.
That did win an Oscar. It did.
I threw up a little in my mouth.
But you would think that he would maybe not want to jump right into another franchise or a blockbuster movie and maybe go back to, a role that's more performance-based or that he could be acclaimed for or get acclaimed for.
For sure.
Okay, so now we're going to get into like all of the X-Men stuff because there's a lot of stuff that came out around Logan releasing. So Patrick Stewart, I guess, recently made the decision that he is not going to portray Professor X anymore after, I guess, sitting at a screening for Logan next to Hugh Jackman and just kind of basically saying this is how he wants to go out as well with a movie of what they think is that caliber. So, yeah, no more. That's kind of sad, right? I mean, of course, we have James McAvoy, but, Patrick Stewart's been doing it since 1998, right? Or 2000, whenever it was.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So, yeah, kind of sad, but probably kind of time, too.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you can't keep playing the same character over and over again. Like, as fans, I'd like to keep seeing him do it because I think he's the perfect choice. I think he's been great. But as an actor, as an artist, you would think that eventually you just get tired of doing the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know. What else is he, I guess, Green Room.
Yeah, I mean, he's done other stuff.
Yeah, I think he does a lot of stage work as well. So
for sure.
But yeah, he's done.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was going to bring up the Deadpool 2 teaser for Logan, but it's not really a trailer because they're not shooting anything. It's just basically saying like, hey, this movie's still coming. Don't forget about Deadpool. But
I was pretty annoyed by that.
Really?
Yeah, because you have well, I mean, I've made my thoughts known on teaser and all, the trailer culture and all that good stuff. This is the most ridiculous thing. Let's have a teaser for a movie that hasn't even finished casting yet.
Yes.
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, obviously, we haven't forgotten about it. It just came out last year. We know that they're making a sequel because I had that little stinger at the end where he said the Cable thing, and that was cute. We don't need this again.
No, I don't know. I don't know why they did it. Just because Deadpool was so hugely successful, and they're like, hey, don't forget Deadpool still exists too, but it wasn't necessary. The people in the theater loved it that I was with. I didn't honestly think it was that funny.
I mean, it was cute. It was whatever. I don't know. I know that he has this thing with Hugh Jackman and Wolverine and all that and Deadpool, so it made sense. But the fact that you have a teaser for a movie that's not even close. I mean, it hasn't even started filming. Hasn't even finished casting yet.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing.
Yeah, it was weird. Speaking of casting, there was some Cable casting news. Earlier in the week, it seemed like it was going to end up being Russell Crowe because that's what I guess had leaked out was that he was in talks for it. But now they are saying that, oh shit, what's this guy? David Yarborough? Is that right?
I've never actually heard it said out loud, but the guy from Stranger Things.
Yeah, so the guy from Stranger Things. And I don't want to belittle him because he's done a ton of stuff, but I think that Stranger Things is probably what got him in contention for this role. But
rightfully so. I mean, he was really good in Stranger Things, and I'd be excited to see him do it because I think he's one of the actors. I think obviously he has the talent to do it, but I think if you put somebody like Russell Crowe in it, it's like, oh, there's Russell Crowe on screen. when it's this guy,
Yeah,
I think he can kind of get lost in the character a little bit more than Russell Crowe can.
Yeah. I think that Ryan Reynolds wants somebody that he can act against, but that's not going to overshadow him, right? Like this movie is going to be about Deadpool and about how Cable's the straight guy and Deadpool's the wacky guy that everybody loves. So Ryan Reynolds doesn't want to be overshadowed by like Russell Crowe or someone like that. Whereas David Harbour or whatever,
you're going to pronounce it differently every time.
Pretty much, he can kind of just blend in and go toe to toe with him, but not take any of the spotlight. Maybe that's a little cynical for me to think.
Yeah, just a tad bit.
But that's kind of where I'm at with it. Let's see. And I think this is the last one before we move on to our Logan review. So Fandango did a survey. I guess it was popular enough to comicbook.com reported on it, but they asked...
That doesn't take much, to be honest with you.
That is a good point. But they asked fans if they are interested in seeing more rated R superhero movies, which is kind of a broad question, but 71% of the fans that answered it said yes. And I know that we've kind of touched on it before, but it's a slippery slope, right?
For sure.
Now Deadpool did great last year. Logan's cleaning up at the box office this weekend. Are they going to like reboot the X-Men and make the X-Men gritty and R-rated? Because it has to be the right character. You can't just say, all right, well, this Iron Man movie needs to be rated R, which I don't think Disney would do, but
no, I mean,
they can't reboot the Fantastic Four even grittier to be an R rating where the thing's crushing people's skulls in. Like it just doesn't work that way. And I know that I'm just curious what the first studio is going to be to fuck that up.
It'll be DC for sure. No, yeah, I was actually having this conversation with one of my buddies at work, and I was surprised that the Wolverine wasn't rated R. Maybe I'm just misremembering that movie a little bit, but I was pretty sure because it's Wolverine that you would assume that it would be pretty violent. But no, I mean, I guess Deadpool was, I mean, it can't be the first one.
No, the Punisher.
Oh, yeah,
the
that's
Punisher
right.
movies and, yeah.
Warzone, yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope for sure. I think there might be a Fantastic Four movie there that you might be able to do. I don't know if you could even do that rated R, though. Like, I mean, the comic book version, yeah, they're a little bit more sitcom-y and a little bit. But I think they could have a Fantastic Four movie there that could be a little bit darker. Maybe not rated R, but maybe a hard PG-13. Because I think there was some elements to that awful Josh Trank movie that were a little bit darker, and that if he had a clear vision and there wasn't 1,000 other things going on with that movie, maybe it could have been a lot better. I mean, it certainly couldn't have been any worse, but I think there could have been some more darker themes in that movie. So I'd like to see it, but only if the character fit, like you said.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening with that, but right now, I guess Deadpool 2 is the only big one on the horizon at this point. So,
yep.
All right. That is all I have for Nerd News.
So like we've teased a couple times already, we are going to go ahead and just jump right into our Logan review. Logan was directed by James Mangold, who actually also did the Wolverine. Of course, it stars Hugh Jackman for the last time as Logan, a.k.a. Wolverine, who isn't healing as well as he used to, trying to make a life for himself and Professor X in a world almost completely void of mutants. So we start off each review by kind of giving our general overview. We call it broad strokes. So how'd you feel about Logan?
So I got out of seeing it and then directly headed over here to record, and I'm still digesting it, and I hope that this review aids in that digestion process, because right now I'm pretty conflicted with it. So I did not have high hopes for this movie at all. If you go back and listen to our Rotten Tomatoes draft, I don't think I was as savage about it as you were about Jungle Book last year, but it wasn't even on my radar. It's like, it's Hugh Jackman's last go, so that's something, but these X-Men movies are so hit and miss anymore, especially the standalone Wolverine movies. I liked the Wolverine, but even that wasn't that great, so I didn't have any expectation for it, and then reviews started pouring in, and getting a lot of love, and the trailers have been cool. I thought that the relationship between him and X-23 was something that they could really work with. But I left the theater feeling a little underwhelmed. I left feeling the same way I thought I would, which was shocking because at the last minute, they had kind of turned me into a believer before I hadn't even seen it, which is maybe, the bad part about the trailer culture you were talking about, and the hype train that we all get on for these movies. So all in all, I mean, I'll save a lot of it for story, but it was a cool last movie for Wolverine. But I feel like just the person in me, the comic book fan that loves continuity, it kind of doesn't have a place and shits on the rest of the X-Men universe that they've kind of built and kind of tore down. And I can't watch it as a standalone movie. I have to tie it to all the other things. And when I do that, it doesn't make sense. And maybe that's not fair to Logan, but it's just where I'm at as a comic book fan and moviegoer that's seen every single X-Men movie that they've put out in theaters.
Okay. I think I was a little bit more excited about this movie than you were. Obviously, if you want to go back to our Rotten Tomatoes draft, I think this was either my third or fourth round pick. I was pretty excited about it. I liked the Wolverine more than you did, and I liked it more than I think most nerds did. I thought it was a really good movie, and like I said, James Mangold did that one as well. So I was pretty excited about this movie, and then, like you said, the reviews were coming in, and I did something that I try to avoid completely, and unfortunately, I just couldn't do it with this movie. And I didn't necessarily read reviews, but I kind of perused them real quick, and I saw one, and I keep bringing this up, but it said that it was the Dark Knight of X-Men movies, and that got me super, super psyched. And it wasn't. It is a really, really good movie, but it definitely has its flaws. So it's not Dark Knight, because I think that's the perfect movie. But I think that my expectations were just a tad bit high. Unfortunately, that's why I shouldn't be perusing reviews before I go into a movie, especially a movie that I know we're going to review, because it does, even though I barely read anything, it did kind of reflect on how I felt about the movie after I got out, because I was conflicted, because I loved a good 80% of this movie, but there was just something about it that I just didn't like. And it took me about a day or so before I kind of pinpointed what I didn't like, and that was, I mean, I'll go ahead and get into it when we talk about the story here a little bit. But I wanted to like this movie a lot more than I ultimately did. But now that I've kind of reflected on it, and I've had a lot more time than you have to digest it, it's not as bad as I thought it was. But bad might be a bad word, because I did enjoy it. I just had my expectations way, way, way too high for this film.
Okay, cool.
So let's jump right into the story. For me, I loved the X-23 Logan Professor X relationship. The Caliban stuff was really stupid. I hate the fact that there's Apocalypse Caliban and then there's Logan. Yeah. Not the same character. There's no way that the same character, played by two different actors, completely different personalities. So I hate the X-Men universe because they do shit like this.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's a minor concern. What really bugged me about this is, and what really kind of took me out of it, is the whole concept of this movie is that there's these kids that have been cloned or have been developed in this lab with mutant DNA. And X-23, which is not much of a spoiler because it's the way she is in the comic books, she's a clone of Wolverine. I loved X-23 in this movie. She was fucking phenomenal. But I really could not fucking care less about the other kids. I really didn't care at all about these other kids. And their backstory, yes, it has to be in this movie, but they kept going back and back and back to it. And it just took me out of it because I was really digging the three of them on this road trip, which is kind of like Old Man Logan.
Yeah.
Which I'll get into that here in a second. But it just, every time they went back to that lab, I just didn't care. And then eventually they get to these other kids, and I really didn't care about them. And I think that's, you're supposed to at this point. And I just didn't, because I just didn't like these kids.
I think people that have hearts, like, just instinctively care about children. And your problem is that you don't have that heart.
That might be a problem. Yeah, I cared about her, and to be honest with you, I really liked the fact that she didn't talk, and I kind of wished that they had kept it for longer than they did, because she talks, I think, about 75% of the way through the movie, and I don't think that's much of a spoiler at all. And then there's a scene towards the end that I think, if that was the first time that she had talked, would have hit really, really hard, and it still hit hard, but I think it would have been a lot more effective if she hadn't talked up to that point, and that was the first time you had heard her. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, so I think that the story was really strong. The relationship, like you were talking about with Professor X and Wolverine and X-23, was great, and that's what the trailers really built up, and it reminded a lot of people of The Last of Us, which is a very popular game on PlayStation 4. And that part of it I really did like. For me, I think the issues are still just stemming from the continuity aspect of it, just not being able to tie it to the rest of the X-Men universe. I don't think it's too big of a spoiler to say, because it's kind of explained in the trailers that, there aren't any other mutants really left at this point.
Yeah.
2029 is, I believe, what the year this takes place. So all of our favorite X-Men from all of the movies that we've watched over the last 17 years got killed off screen. It's kind of hinted at how they died, and that's even shittier. The way that they possibly met their demise. So all of that stuff rubbed me the wrong way. But if I block that stuff out in my brain and just kind of take Logan as this standalone story, I like it a lot more. But unfortunately, with just my comic book brain being what it is and tying everything to a universe and what the Avengers has done to us at this point, I can't do it. And it really does take away from this movie for me, unfortunately. Other aspects of the film, I mean, obviously, the villains need to be talked about, and I won't get into performances. Just story-wise, I think that they sufficed. But I think that it's also kind of played out in this X-Men universe. Like, oh, we're making weapons. We're making weapons.
Yep.
We're making weapons.
We've seen it before.
I've seen it a lot. And I will say that I think that they did it pretty well in this movie. But whenever it comes to the surprise villain towards the end of the movie, and I'm not going to get anywhere near spoiling it, so don't worry about that. I thought that was a little lame as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent to the story. I think that it's good in a vacuum, but unfortunately, with the brain I have, I can't experience it in that vacuum.
So a while back, I think it was probably 3 or 4 episodes, maybe even longer than that, I finally got around to reading Old Man Logan.
Yeah.
And I talked about how I was really excited. One of the other reasons why I was excited for this movie is I really loved Old Man Logan. It was just as good as everybody had said it was. But I was a little bit nervous because I wasn't quite sure how they were going to do it, because Old Man Logan was supposed to inspire this movie. I really liked how it was kind of like a spiritual adaptation of Old Man Logan, because there's so many Marvel characters like Hawkeye, Red Skull, and there's so many others that play a pretty big role in Old Man Logan that obviously can't be in Logan. But I really liked how it was just kind of this road trip, which is like Old Man Logan, and it's this post-apocalyptic sort of world that they live in. And Logan is trying to kind of build this just regular life for himself, which he does in Old Man Logan as well. So I just really liked how, it wasn't a panel for panel adaptation by any means, but it's kind of like this spiritual adaptation. I really liked how they did that.
Just before we go on to performances, as I kind of am reflecting on things, one thing that disappointed me with the story, and you talking about Old Man Logan kind of got me thinking maybe that's how he was in the comic, but it was kind of disappointing seeing Hugh Jackman play Wolverine for the last time and him be so weak. Like even in the climax, the climactic battle between him and the surprise villain I won't name, he just comes across as, he's barely hanging on by a thread, and that's, you want to see Wolverine go berserk, and you kind of get a little bit of that in this movie, but through the whole film he's coughing and dying and on his last leg, as it were, and I don't know. That was kind of a bummer for me. So is that how he is in Old Man Logan?
No. He chooses to not fight in Old Man Logan. And the reason why he chooses that is actually a pretty big spoiler. So I won't get into that in case somebody hasn't read it. But no, he's not like that. But I liked the way they played it up in this movie. Like, I understood why he chose to do what he's doing, and it kind of actually makes sense what's happening and why it's taken this long for this particular thing to happen to him because of his healing factor.
Yeah.
So that didn't bother me because I think it worked. I mean, you got to see a different side of the character that you're not used to seeing in the past X-Men movies. And you do get some berserker.
Yeah, it's definitely there.
In earlier in the movie with the gang members. I'm assuming they're gang members or whatever they were.
I believe they were referred to as cholos.
Okay, tomato. But you do get to see him even in his weakened state going against just regular people. He kind of goes berserk a little bit, and then at the end, he definitely, for a very short period of time, but you do get to see that. So I think the fact that they played up what's happening to him, plus you still got to see a little bit of old Wolverine, I thought they actually did a pretty good kind of that balancing act.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, so into the performances. I've told this to everybody that I've talked to. Hugh Jackman, they can never do Wolverine again, right? I mean, he's been good so far. I mean, X-Men Origins or the Wolverine Origins was bad, but I don't think that was necessarily his fault. But this was just so, like, he gave it his all, and I think he kind of saved his best performance for his last performance as Wolverine. I thought he was amazing in this.
Yeah, he was great, and I agree with you that, I mean, you play the character for 17 years and you don't think that there's much else he could bring to it.
Sure.
And he did. I think that you're right. He definitely kind of stepped his game up. He knew this was going to be his last one and put it all out there, and it really paid off for him because his performance in this movie was great.
I thought Patrick Stewart, the same thing. James McAvoy obviously does play Professor X, but I think he did a really good job. I liked the difference in his character as well.
Yeah, so I'm at a certain point. It's like, oh, it's rated R. Excuse me, it's rated R, so Professor X can say fuck now.
Yeah,
but given where his character is at in this movie, it makes more sense for his demeanor to have changed and his thought process to have changed a little bit. So him being a little bit more rough around the edges, as opposed to the prim and proper Professor X we're used to, does make sense in the context of this movie.
For sure. How'd you feel about the little girl?
She was amazing. She was great. Even, I know that you complained about her talking towards the end of the movie, whenever she's silent for the rest of it. And I agree with you there, but even when she's speaking, she was great. So
yeah.
She's out of nowhere. I've never seen her in anything. So
no.
I thought that was a pretty great casting call.
Yeah. It's tough to get a good child actor, and I mean she knocked it out of the park because she isn't talking, so she has to convey a lot of that emotion through her facial expressions, and so I really appreciated how well she did that. And I had more of a problem with the story and the writing. If you're going to have her not talk, don't have her talk until this particular moment, and it would have hit harder. It had nothing to do with her performance. I thought her performance was amazing considering, I mean, I don't know how old she is, but she's obviously pretty young. And then just the dynamic between the two of them is just great.
For sure. They play off each other extremely well.
For sure. So action-wise, I'm sure that you're going to be a little disappointed because you didn't, like you said, you didn't get to see Wolverine kind of go berserk that much. But I was surprised, even though it was rated R, how fucking brutal this movie was.
Yeah. So at the beginning that you were kind of hinting at where he gets into a tussle with some cholos.
You just like saying cholos.
I do. Whenever the first like pretty gory thing happens, like my theater didn't like erupt by any means, but it got a reaction out of everybody at a 4:00 showing on a Sunday. So
yeah,
anybody who waited till Sunday to see this movie probably was either at Disney World or wasn't rushing.
No, they were all at Disney World with you.
They weren't knocking down the door to see it. So the fact that the action got a response from the crowd I was in was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it surprised me, and I'm used to seeing stuff like that. I guess I wasn't prepared for it in a comic book movie because I mean they still get violent. Wolverine kills people, but not like he did.
Yeah, for sure.
That was pretty crazy. I actually thought they were a little bit more subdued with her though. When she was killed, like it wasn't as brutal, and I don't know if that because she's a kid, but there's a scene where she's in the house and they go to get her, and then you just kind of see you hear them kind of tussling, but you don't actually ever see it, and then she just kind of like tosses the guy's head out.
Yeah.
So I mean, they could have been even more violent than it was. And so they kind of pulled it back a little bit with her, but she was still pretty violent throughout the movie as well. Yeah,
I'm actually on the other side of that. What am I trying to say here? I didn't expect her to be as crazy and as violent as she was. So I was very pleased with that.
For sure. So unless you have anything else, that's pretty much all I have for Logan.
Yeah, I think that our conversation helped me digest it a little bit more. So I'm ready for a star rating if you are.
All right. So what'd you give it?
I'm going to do 3.5.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like this movie a little bit more. I'm going to go with, I wanted to give it 4.5, like prior to going to see it. I was like, oh man, Dark Knight. Like that got me really hyped, but I'm going to settle in at a 4 and maybe rewatching it. I probably won't go see it again in the theaters, but I will definitely get it on Blu-ray. Maybe it bumps up eventually to 4.5 when I don't have those high expectations, and maybe I can appreciate it a little bit more on the second and third viewing, but right now it's 4.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so our last segment, just kind of cap off each episode. We do Nerd Favorite. We take turns asking each other what our favorite blank is. Obviously, the topic changes from episode to episode. It's my week this week since we just got done talking about Hugh Jackman's last go as Wolverine. I thought we would talk about our favorite Hugh Jackman film, which when I thought of this question, I thought, well, it's just going to be an X-Men movie.
Yeah.
Because I forget that he's done so much for so long. So I looked at his IMDb page and I was like, oh man, he's actually, I mean, he's been in some shit, but he's also been in a lot of really good movies. And one that I had forgotten about because it's kind of it's definitely a downer. I've only actually ever seen it once, but I was just completely floored when I saw it was Prisoners.
Yeah.
The ending is what kind of got me, and I know everybody bitches about the ending. It didn't necessarily bother me as much as I think a lot of people did, but he's fucking phenomenal in that movie. Everybody's really great in it. Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman, Paul Dano is great in it as well. I mean, just it's really tough to watch, but if you haven't seen it, I definitely suggest it because it's one of those movies you're not gonna necessarily enjoy watching. It's not quite Manchester by the Sea, but it's not necessarily a fun movie to watch, but you just have to sit back and appreciate the storytelling and appreciate the acting. And it's definitely one of his best performances for sure.
Yeah, I love that movie a lot, and like you, I own it on Blu-ray, but I've only seen it like twice, like in theaters and when I bought the Blu-ray, because it is not the most pleasant watch, but it is full of great performances and a cool story. So I definitely agree. Prisoners is great. Like you, when you just said this, I was immediately like, all right, so which X-Men movie is my favorite? And then, you dig into his filmography a little bit, and there's an obvious answer for me, and that is The Prestige.
Okay.
Which I think this movie is a little underrated. Christopher Nolan made it between Batman movies, and it was well received when it came out, but it's just kind of slipped into obscurity a little bit. And I really love this movie. I love the twists and the turns with the magic. I know that in this movie there's some real magic, which I don't think everybody is as keen on as I am. This came out about the same time as The Illusionist, and I think a lot of people might prefer The Illusionist over The Prestige, but for me, The Prestige is just amazing. You have Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman, Michael Caine, a fantastic cast, and it was in my top 10 for a long time, and obviously we did our top 10 movies last year or the year before, and it wasn't in there anymore, and I still hold true to that, but that doesn't mean I don't love it any less, because it is a great movie.
Yeah, I like this movie. It's a little bloated. I mean, it's a slow burn for sure. But once you get there and you kind of appreciate all the moving parts, yeah, I like this movie a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say that I like The Illusionist better. I actually rewatched The Illusionist because for a long time I did.
Yeah,
I did kind of put these two together, and I was like, oh, The Illusionist, the Prestige is good, but The Illusionist is better. I recently rewatched The Illusionist, and it's not that good.
I've seen it once, and I haven't seen it since. And when I saw it, it was like right around its release, so it's been 10 years. So I need to revisit it, but even then, I enjoy The Prestige more.
Yeah, I saw The Illusionist in theaters, and the one thing I remember about it is that the girl I was dating at the time and I snuck in Ben & Jerry's ice cream to the theaters, and that was the best part of that movie. So, yeah, it wasn't great. But that's it for episode 131 of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. They're both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. You can comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which, like I said, in What I'm Into, I'll be starting my Let's Plays for Zelda Breath of the Wild. You can also check out our Twitch channel, which Tyler does a weekly stream Monday at 9 p.m. Central. Is it still For Honor?
Yeah. Last week, obviously, it wasn't on because I was out of town, but tomorrow night will be For Honor.
Cool, man. I definitely need to get into that game. It looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
You can also subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any podcatcher you use. We're on it. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt.
We are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.